My sister slammed a folder on the table and announced, "The house belongs to me." She didn't know that buried inside the inheritance documents, hidden in a clause she never bothered to read, was the one condition that would destroy her entire plan. And when the lawyer reached that line, he stopped cold. That moment? That was when everything she'd built came crashing down. If you've ever been underestimated, by family no less, hit that subscribe button. If you've ever watched someone try to take what wasn't theirs, leave a like. And comment where you're listening from, because this story proves one thing: justice doesn't need a raised voice, just the right paperwork. My name is Cynthia Blake, and this story begins long before the meeting where everything finally shattered. It began with a phone call. A cold, late-night call that split my life into before and after. I was sitting at my kitchen table, trying to finish small tasks that suddenly felt impossible, when an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. The man on the line spoke slowly, almost carefully, as if rushing the words might break something fragile inside me. "I'm sorry to inform you, your parents were in a traffic accident." The rest came in fragments: procedures, locations, confirmations, none of it landing fully in my mind. I just remember staring at the grain of the wooden table, tracing lines with my fingertip, trying to anchor myself to something real. By the time I arrived at the hospital, everything had already been decided without me. My parents were gone, their belongings neatly sealed away, their final moments delivered to me through clipped sentences and paperwork that required signatures my hands barely remembered making. Grief didn't hit me like a wave. It hit me like static, disjointed, unfocused, buzzing loudly enough that even simple decisions felt like deciphering a foreign language. And that's when Teresa, my older sister, stepped in. Teresa moved with the brisk confidence of someone who had never doubted her authority a day in her life. She answered calls before they fully rang. She took the phone out of my hands when I hesitated. She spoke to relatives with a tone that suggested she'd been appointed the family spokesperson by divine right. From the outside, it looked helpful, saintly even. Inside, I didn't have the strength to question anything. When I faltered, she was there. When papers arrived, she took them. When decisions needed to be made, she made them. At first, I was grateful. Genuinely grateful. Grief had hollowed me out, and she stepped into that hollow space like she owned it. But slowly, too slowly, I started to notice something. Her tone was different when she handled anything tied to the estate. More clipped, more directive. And she guarded the paperwork like a dragon sitting on gold. One binder, thick enough to choke a filing cabinet, always at her side. Property records, legal letters, bank correspondence, death certificates. All of it flowed through her. If you asked a question, she had an answer before you finished speaking. "It's taken care of. You don't need to worry about that. Everything's already been handled." Convenient phrases. Rehearsed phrases. Phrases meant to end conversations, not start them. And for a while, everyone let her. Family avoided conflict. Relatives deferred to the organized sibling. And I just tried to keep breathing. About a month after the funeral, when life was trying and failing to return to routine, I ran into a woman named Margaret Lewis, a longtime family acquaintance. We weren't close. I hadn't seen her in years. So when she noticed me and asked how I'd been, her voice didn't carry the pity people usually lace their words with after a loss. She listened quietly. Then she said something that froze me in place. "Be careful with any documents you're asked to sign, even if they look routine." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She didn't elaborate. She didn't gossip. She didn't name names. She just added one more sentence. "Once something is signed, fixing it becomes much harder." And then she walked away. That was the moment, the exact moment, my fog began to lift. I went home, pulled out every paper I had, and started reading. Not skimming. Not trusting summaries. Reading. And I realized how much I didn't know. How much I'd let slide. How much Teresa controlled. So I started digging quietly. Not to accuse. Not to confront. But to understand. And what I found opened an entirely new path. Through official channels, not Teresa, I requested older property records, archived documents, and versions of filings from before the funeral. I compared everything line by line. Most differences were subtle. Formatting changes, updates, minor amendments. But then, one clause stood out. A clause that determined who could claim sole ownership of the family home. It required documented continuous residency, verified payment of taxes, insurance, and maintenance responsibility, all within a strict, time-sensitive window. Teresa never mentioned it. Not once. And now I understood why. Because she didn't meet any of the requirements. But I did. While Teresa lived comfortably across town, I had been living in the house, first helping my parents, then maintaining the place because I assumed it was temporary. I never thought it would matter. But in legal terms, it mattered more than anything. So I requested certified copies of my residency records, my property tax receipts, my insurance payments, my maintenance logs. And I filed them quietly, legally, properly.
No teatrix. No declarations.
Just compliance. Everything Teresa assumed she controlled, she didn't. Everything she thought was a formality wasn't. And she had no idea. The morning of the inheritance meeting felt like stepping into a pressure chamber. The air wasn't heavy. It was still, like everyone was waiting for instructions. Teresa entered with her lawyer at her side, shoulders squared, binder in hand, wearing the look of someone who believed the outcome was already written. She sat, opened her folder, and declared, "This is straightforward. The house belongs to me." Bold, confident, utterly baseless. Her lawyer began reading, smoothly at first, until he reached that final clause.
And stopped.
He didn't cough, didn't stutter, didn't lose his place. He paused because he recognized what it meant. "What's wrong?" Teresa snapped. "Read it." He didn't move. So she grabbed the folder and read it herself. Slowly. Then out loud. Continuous documented residency. Verified financial responsibility. No exclusive claim without proof. Her voice wavered for the first time in the entire process. This doesn't apply to me," she said. The lawyer looked pained. "Teresa, it applies to whoever seeks sole ownership. And you did not submit the required documentation." Her jaw tightened. The confidence drained from her posture. And that finally was when I placed my folder on the table. Quietly.
No dramatics.
Just paper. The kind of paper that ends arguments. The lawyer opened it, reviewed the dates, the stamps, the signatures. When he looked up, the shift in the room was unmistakable. "With these documents," he said, "the conditions have been satisfied by Cynthia. Sole ownership cannot be transferred to anyone else." The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend metal. Teresa stared at me like she didn't recognize me. "You went behind my back." "I followed the terms as written," I replied. "The clause doesn't require notice." She had played a game of confidence. I played a game of documentation. And her game never stood a chance. What followed wasn't dramatic. It was slow, cold, inevitable. Her lawyer dropped her within weeks. Family members stopped deferring to her. Invitations dried up. People hesitated when her name came up, unsure how to navigate the fallout. The empire of control she had built, through confidence, speed, and manipulation, collapsed without a fight. Because all along, it was built on the assumption that no one would question her. But I did. Quietly, legally, effectively. I formalized the house in my name, reorganized my finances, separated every record tied to my parents' estate, and slowly, deliberately, I distanced myself from the sister who tried to erase me with a signature. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, out of necessity. Silence became my boundary. Documentation became my protection. Distance became my peace. Family doesn't excuse manipulation. Confidence doesn't equal authority. And paperwork, when read carefully, can be the sharpest weapon you'll ever hold. So read everything. Sign nothing blindly. And never confuse someone's volume with their power. If you found this story satisfying, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder. Revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it quietly signs the right form. What's the most satisfying family justice you've witnessed? Drop your stories in the comments. I'll be reading.